Welcome to Harlem Capital's More Equity podcast. We're so happy you're here. My name is Melody Hahm, and I lead community and platform at HCP. This season, I have the privilege of speaking with 5 incredible Latina luminaries. Venture capital funding for Latino businesses has had a disappointing trajectory since its peak in 2018. Latino founders get only 2% of VC funding, with only 0.4% going to Latino women. That's why we believe it's imperative to invest in this growing yet mighty community that's committed to paving the path for others. More Equity's Latina Luminaries takes you through the journeys of 5 women building world-changing businesses across the United States and Latin America. From their unconventional career paths to the nitty-gritty of fundraising, they share how they're pursuing their dreams and serving as a lighthouse for the next generation. Hope you enjoy the conversations as much as I did. In today's episode, we chat with Daniela Corrente, Chief Strategy and Business Officer at Suma Wealth. She built the save-to-buy shopping platform Real, which just got acquired by Suma, a leading financial education and tech platform for Latinos. As a Venezuelan immigrant, she reflects on how her experience selling bikes for her family's business and her storied background in marketing helped buoy her confidence when she raised capital for Real, for which she raised a total of $7 million. Take a listen. Thanks so much for joining us today, Daniela.
Yeah, very happy to be here sharing the story, Melody.
Yeah, for sure. We have so much to dig into, but first of all, this acquisition is quite fresh. It happened in February, and you have this new role as Chief Strategy and Business Officer. I'm curious about how the conversations, if you can kind of give us a peek behind the curtain, came about between Real and Suma.
Yeah, look, I've known Beatriz Acevedo, which is the CEO of Suma, for 5 years. Now we knew each other because there are very few Latinas in fintech, and that's how we met. And I've been really impressed with everything that she has created, not only at Suma, but at Me Too and in her career, the path that she has opened for so many Latinas like me. So we became friends and we've been talking about the opportunities and the opportunities, especially for Latinos, right? Because Latinos spend 3 trillion last year. They contribute 3 trillion to the GDP here in America, but yet we don't feel included. And so she had the community piece with Suma, and I had all the technology with Real around savings and contributions and shipping. So last year it flew up very naturally that we join forces and expand the offerings for the Latino community.
Yeah, and just a couple remarkable facts about this partnership. As you mentioned, you're joining Suma's co-founders, Beatriz and Mary Hernandez,
Yeah.
and that really makes the only solely Latina C-suite trifecta in the fintech space. I think the stat is of 30,000 some fintech companies here in the US, only 0.03% are Latina-led. And y'all are 3 Latinas at the top running the business, which is pretty remarkable. Can you take a moment to kind of, I know, so much of the business itself for both Real as well as Suma is engaging with the Latino community. So it kind of makes sense, right? That the people at the top should reflect the audience you're trying to serve. But so often that's not the case, right? When you look across fintech. Yeah, would love your reflections just on that pretty remarkable milestone.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it happened very serendipitously. Honestly, as I was telling you when we chatted a while back, it's not that we got together just because we're Latinas. We got together is because we had the right expertise, the right background, the right products, and we happen to be Latina, and we happen to have very different immigration experiences. Right, where Mary's born and raised here, but with Latino background. Beatriz is from Mexico, and she moved here. For her career. I'm from Venezuela. I moved here to the States for college. So we all have immigration stories and Latino stories that are different, but we all can relate. And so the fact that we're together, that we get to bring those different point of views and we get to serve our community is incredible. right? Real wasn't only focused on Latino, Real was general market, but a big percentage of our users were Latino, and that was always a huge source of pride for me. So now focusing on our community is something that I'm incredibly excited about.
Yeah, tell me more about this new role within Suma and how you're using your expertise and your background, not only being the founder and CEO of Real, but also previously working in the advertising and marketing industry. Um, Tell me how all of that comes together in a perfect marriage in this role.
Yeah, look, so I know a lot of entrepreneurs hear these, and I think one thing that nobody told us when we become founders or C level of a company, it's you gotta sell, right? When you're a founder, you have this amazing idea and it can be purely technical, but you gotta go and sell it to people and you sell it to investors. And nobody tells you that at the beginning. It's something that you learn, and you learn that that story is key to success and it's key to opening doors. And so I'm very grateful that my background is actually in advertising, right? Because one, I got to have the connections on the enterprise level for many clients that I work with back in the day. I got to work at amazing agencies in New York with incredible people and got to learn that side of the business where you come up with an idea and you have to convey it to a client. And then becoming a CEO of a company, I had to learn how to shift that story to be more data driven, right? To then be catered to investors. And now at Suma, as the chief strategy and business officer, and sort of merging all of my background in the sense that, on the strategy side, it's very data driven, it's very KPI driven, it's very much looking at the business holistically. But then from a business development perspective, it's all about partnerships, right? Like what do we build internally, or how do we craft that story in order to log partnerships with large enterprise and institutions that want to reach the Latino community. So yeah, that's how it all came together in a very organic way. But I'm excited. I feel like all the background has prepared me in a way for the role that I took now.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I feel like so often we kind of, as you're alluding to, founders don't have a blueprint, right? There's no manual, there's no formula. You can read a bunch of things online, you can find the mentors, but there is no such thing as the syllabus, right? For you to follow play by play. And the reason I mention that is it's fascinating to see in, hindsight, right? You're like, okay, I see how all these experiences actually do really help me and have helped me in my future opportunities. But I am curious, when you were growing up in Venezuela, did you always have those entrepreneurial dreams and that fire? What did you want to be when you grew up? I guess take me back to little Daniela.
Look, it's funny you ask that because I grew up around a very entrepreneurial family, but I didn't realize that until I started teaching for my business many, many, many years later. When somebody asked me, like, "Oh, you grew up around entrepreneurs," and to me, right, my grandparents were immigrants. They came after the war. They left Italy to go to Venezuela. So my parents, born and raised in Venezuela, but entrepreneurs. So everybody has that mentality of being very hands-on, right? And I grew up around that. Everybody around me, my grandparents had their company, my parents had their company, right? I'm of the school of when we were in summer vacation or Christmas, my parents would take us to work, right? Because it was their company and they had a bicycle company. And I'm incredibly thankful now, looking back, that my dad would put me to sell bikes. Uh, and that was an incredible experience. I was like, ever since I can remember, right? During the holiday season is the best season to sell bicycles. And there are like these big stores like the Targets in Venezuela. It's not Target, it's like Euromercado, or there are stores like that. And they would put all the bicycles outside, and they obviously had people selling the bicycles, but my dad was always like, "Hey, learn to sell." So you go there and start selling. And when I was like 10, 11, like all of those ages. So I think like that passion for selling and that fun came from how I grew up, and I didn't get to appreciate it until later in my life. I didn't think I was going to be an entrepreneur, to be honest with you. Um, I I went full on corporate, and I think actually I was the first one in my family, that immediate family, that went full on corporate. Everybody had always had their businesses, and don't get me wrong, I had so many learnings on corporate. I meet really young founders or aspiring founders now. They're like, "Do you think it's worth that to be on corporate?" Absolutely. To me, it was so worth it to learn business dynamics, to build a network, to understand hierarchies. It was incredible to have that opportunity. But going back to your question, no, I never knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. But starting and doing what I wanted was never that limited. And so when this idea came to life, I was like, why not? Right? I grew up in an environment where it was very much like, what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't, you put it all, and if you put it all, most likely it's gonna work out. And if it doesn't, you learn and you pivot. And extremely grateful to my parents for that. And that led me to become an entrepreneur and go full force.
Yeah. This season of our podcast is entitled Latina Luminaries because we want to kind of highlight the folks who are paving the path for the next generation. But I think it's really important before talking about who you're illuminating the path for the people who have paved the path for you or who have been sort of the beacon of light, the lighthouse, if you will, in your own entrepreneurial journey. It sounds like your parents were a huge factor there. But are there any other names that come to mind?
Look, there are many people. I think, you know, I recently read something that it's like when somebody's self-made, it's not only self-made for the work you put in, but your support system plays such an important role. So there are people that have looked up doing every single job that I've had, that they have definitely inspired me, right? I remember at Sachi, there is Andrea Diquez. Uh, she's a Venezuelan, became, I think, the first female CEO at Sachi and Sachi in New York. And I got to work very closely with her, and she's incredibly inspirational. But I've also worked with coaches like Robin Ward. But in general, there are so many people, even now, right? Like Mary and Bea, and so incredibly inspirational with everything that they have achieved, right? My co-founder, for real, Alejandro, it's incredibly inspirational. Like I've been very lucky to be surrounded by people that enable me to be me, but also push me to grow. And I think that's been that's been key for my personal success and my personal growth, because it's all about evolution, right? Like, and that's what I look for in every role, in every adventure that I take. Right? Like we only
Yeah.
have one life, so we might as well take adventures that we're proud of. And I think, as when you come deep into the startup world, I know sometimes there's like, we're crazy that we love this roller coaster, but it pushes you to evolve every single day, and I love it for it.
Yeah, there's a certain level of masochism involved, but it's like, yeah, or adrenaline junkie, I don't know, however you want to put it. But that negotiating, you're laughing as though like, yep, that's how I am.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's that, it drives you. It's like, ah, it's so exciting, honestly, to see your idea come to life, to learn, to go out there and put it in the world, and keep evolving with either comments or how people engage with the platform, or when you see that it's actually making an impact. All of those things. I think it took me a while to realize it, when I started my first company, which was real, because at the beginning you are so heads down in building, that then you look up and you realize that without noticing, you are unlocking so many things for you, for the people around you, and it's a beautiful process.
Yeah. It's really interesting because Real obviously was very mission driven. And you had, it sounds like, a personal mission tied to the professional goal. and Suma obviously is very similar. One question we hear a lot, just even with Harlem Capital's portfolio companies, but also just thinking about the broader um, entrepreneurial landscape is how do you know if a partner is the right fit, right? There are a lot of potential acquisition offers, there's a lot of potential good partnerships, but in reality, I think it's actually a very daunting task to think about, okay, this baby that I built, I mean, you were building real since 2017, right?
Yeah.
Are we ready to find it a new home kind of thing? So I'm curious your thought process and maybe like the checklist of things you went through. I know you had deep respect and appreciation for Bea, but outside of that, how did you know for sure that this was the kind of marriage that would make sense?
Look, I think as a founder, right, you have to realize what's the best way or what's going to be the most efficient way to execute on your vision. So I'll take you through my thought process a little bit with Suma, right? Like we've built all this product with Real. We saw very high engagement with our community. But obviously, over the past couple of years, with the pandemic, acquisition cost increases. And so, in order for us to reach scale with our product, right, we needed to tap into a large community. And Suma already has a very large community, right? So, for me, my goal with Real was always to show people the potential of their own cash flow. So, be very true to yourself on why you started and what your vision is. And so, I realized that if we brought that technology into the Suma platform, then we can unlock the potential of people cash flow. We could show them that they can achieve that they want without debt, that savings is fun and easy, and do it at a large scale, right? Because they already had that community built. So that unlocked that mission part for me. Then the other piece is that my customers have always been incredibly important to me. So when we were looking at possible people, at possible companies, I was like, who is really, and we had different conversations. I'm like, okay, who is really going to take care of these customers? Who is as passionate for the customer as I am? Right? Who is really going to not only look at the monetization piece, right? Like large enterprise do, but it's going to look into the community that we have already built and really supported them. And so those were two key things. And then the third one, on a personal level, for me, it was like, is this company a company where I see myself growing? Is this company that aligns with my personal path, right? With what I envision for myself, and am I gonna be surrounded by people that I respect, but that they respect me too, so that we can all keep propelling each other forward. As I said earlier, like to me, it's very important the people that you surround yourself with, and so Suma definitely check all of those both boxes, and so that's what it makes perfect sense for us from a company perspective, from a customer perspective, from a personal perspective, and from, my own personal commitment perspective, because I love this mission that Suma has and I was fully on board and I wanted to, founders have different reasons when they sell their company. But if I was gonna join the company that acquired us, I wanted to be personally passionate and as excited as I was for Real for this company. And I can tell you that for Suma, I am. I love it. And it's opening a whole new world for me because it's more impact driven. And it's the few weeks that I've been here, I've absolutely loved it.
How do you think about your own financial literacy and your own ability, right, to advocate for yourself as a female founder, as a woman in the C-suite? Because I imagine there's a lot of things that you've been able to master in knowledge, and I'm curious how that translates into practice.
It's that's an amazing question and one that nobody had ever asked me in an interview. And the reason why I think it's so amazing is because, you know, founders, we tend to have this tendency of leaving ourselves last, right? Especially in a hard economy, we're the first ones to cut our salary. We're the first ones to, you know,
Not sleep,
figure
not
not
eat.
yeah, yeah, no. From a mental perspective, I think there is a lot there, right? Like again, support system. Like I think I've done pretty great from that end, from a financial standpoint. I think I've been way better at learning and advocating, if I'm totally transparent, than actually like my own for years now through acquisition and all of that. Now I'm like way more structured. But for years, when I was wearing the hat of the CEO, to me it was, my team first and the company first. And I see that around companies at the stage where Real was at. It it's very traditional, right? And I think that actually investors could do a better job at that. I think investors many times they look into how much you are spending in salaries, into how much you're doing in distribution. And I think it's very rude that uh, that they don't take a look into being like, hey, look, especially with everything that happened recently. I have so many founder friends that everything that happened a while back with all the banking. That the first thing that the investors told them is like, well, you know, you gotta cut your salary, and it's like, well, it's easy to say that, right? But sit down and be like, some of those people have families. Some of those people. So I think that as a community in general, in pre-seed, seed, and Series A, both founders and investors could do better to secure themselves financially, because I think what investors like to see is that if the founder has a good base, right, when they don't have to be worried about their personal finances, then there are gonna be less worries on their plate, and they can commit better to the business. So I think it's very short sighted that investors don't actually invest on making sure that founders are very well taken care of. But yeah.
Yeah. When you think about your own founder journey, um, not only being a female founder, but a Latina founder and an immigrant founder, tell me about some of the unforeseen obstacles. It sounds like you've had a lot of confidence in yourself over the years, and that has only grown over time. But maybe in the earliest days, what were kind of feeding your insecurities or your fears?
It's super interesting because I mean ignorance is bliss. And when I started there were many things that I didn't know, right? And trust I didn't look at all the data for Latinos and investment. I just knew that I had an idea, and again, I was fortunate enough that, at the time, I was in New York, in LA, so it's communities where startup, it's part of the conversation. And there are communities where, and it's not that I had any background in investments, or I had any contacts with VCs, but going into those rooms without necessarily knowing the data was incredible, because I I didn't that was not a worry. And then I realized very quickly that, obviously uh data the data speaks for itself when it comes to allocation of capital, and how capital gets distributed. And at that point you gotta be your biggest cheer up person. You gotta be like full on. This is the vision, this is the idea, and yeah, unfortunately, you know how to work 20 times harder, many times, to walk into the room. But yeah, that's part of what the experience was. I'm a big believer of focusing on what you have and not on what you lack. And so I knew what I had to bring to the table. And everywhere I go, I'm like, yeah, you might be this big name, but I'm Daniela Corrente. So you're welcome.
Yes. Oh man, that's the kind of energy we need. We all need to infuse in ourselves. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm here
Oh, wow.
gracing your presence.
Yeah. And huge shout out to my mother for teaching me that since I was a kid, because it has served me very well so far.
Yeah, for sure. Specific to the fundraising journey, as I understand it, you had raised close to $7 million with Real. Did you get to a Series A, or tell me about, the fundraising process, if you could kind of go through the logistical nitty-gritty there?
Yeah, of course. Look, if there are any aspiring founders out there, it's not a linear journey. Don't let anything make you believe that it's a linear journey. For some people it is, for some of us it's not, and you learn it, as you said, Melody, you learn it along the way. So we did accelerator, we did angel, then we did a pre-seed, then we did a seed, and then we did an extension. So that's how we raised the 7 million. Sometimes you will see you become really good at reading. Uh, Sort of the stats out there because I could compile it all and say like, oh, we'll need a very large seed, but being very transparent and very honest because that's the only way people are gonna know that the journey they are going through, it's normal. It's more it's more normal than what people talk about, and yeah.
Yeah. Talk me through some of the hardest conversations you've had with potential investors. Do you feel like you got, coming from an advertising and marketing background, I think you probably had a leg up, right? Because to your point, most founders are told, hey, if you just build a product, they will come. And it's very clear that is not true. You have to know how to sell it, you have to know how to position it. So I'm assuming, you had multiple steps advantage in that regard. But it still must have been very daunting, right? To be walking into rooms, to be in Zoom calls, to be, you know, trying to meet with a lot of investors. I'm assuming many of whom were not Latina or woman. Yeah, how would you define your fundraising experience overall?
Yeah, so um let me you said something about the marketing, and I'll tell you a quick story, and that's actually shows you how much the marketing impacted the way I went about the business. The business really started out of a survey that I sent out. I was chatting with my co-founder of Real, Alejandro, and he was working on a brief for a financial institution, and I was working on a brief for a retailer. And literally over wine, chatting, we're talking about how people, the younger generation, are different with their money and how they don't have credit cards. And I'm like, no, hold on. I don't believe this data that they've paid millions of dollars. Like, let me do my own survey. And I pull out a survey monkey and put a survey monkey out. And that's a little bit of how Real started. So very much leveraging the marketing hat in order to do survey and acquiring data. And then from the walking into rooms perspective and pitching, and look, I think the hardest thing about pitching, there are two things as a founder. Personally, I think one, it's you gotta get very comfortable with no's because you get so many no's. And if I've known people that have told me, oh, 10 people have told me no. Oh, if I would have stopped at 10, I wouldn't have raised even 100K, right? So you go after, oof, I pitched hundreds of people to get the capital that we got. And so to keep yourself energized and don't take it personal and learn out of those experiences, right? It's very easy to be like, "Pff, they didn't understand me." But no, sometimes there is really good feedback. So they're investors, and I appreciate that when they actually take the time to give you feedback on the why not, and not some generic answers, right? That are like just nonsensical. But so that, and second, it's knowing if you're pitching that you're getting those no's, but you're managing a full on team and keeping the team excited because even though they knew that they were buying into startup, right? They are not buying into the constant no's that you're going in when you pitch. So always being very transparent, but also being mindful, right? That for founders, like some people freak out more easily than founders. I think we have very thick skin uh, when you're running a company, and just keeping people motivated and excited, even when you're like, I'm in pitch number 60, right? And like, come on, let's keep moving. So that, to me, that was more daunting than the actual storytelling piece. To me, that was more shocking, and it's exhaustion. And especially when you're early stage and you have a small team, it's not like you can be like, I'm gonna be fully dedicated to fundraising because you also have to show progress, right? So you have to be working at the same time that you're doing outreach, at the same time that you're doing presentations, that you're adapting presentations. So it's very much um, you have to invest a lot in your own self and keeping yourself balanced in order to keep pushing forward in a healthy way.
That's such practical and tactical advice because an overall theme of our conversation has been you have to sort of nourish yourself first in order to be a capable leader, right? And someone that people actually want to work for and can curry a lot of confidence and favor. And I think so often founders, because they're so heads down and building and so passionate, there is this expectation, right, that their employees would feel exactly the same way. But oftentimes that's unfair, right? Yeah, you do want someone who's motivated and energized, but at the same time, they don't have the equity stake you do. They don't have the building blocks of fiery passion that you do. So I think that's really spot on in the way you really have to galvanize your internal stakeholders just as much as your external ones.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something that you know uh, that was a frustrating realization, especially like when we look into data and Latinas in technology. You can argue that many things are technology nowadays, in particular, like in fintech, right? I work into many rooms where investors would be like, oh yeah, we invest in Latina, but every single Latina in their cap table is CPG, right? And all power to them. Trust me, I buy everything from Latinas founders. Like if I walk into Target and I see something from a Latina, I do video, I buy it. I'm a big, huge advocate. But having that diversity too, I think it's important. I'm like, okay, this is awesome, but how many, like me, that it's actually building technology are you invested on? Because if you are, I just thought that was very interesting because as you said, right, 2%, only 2% of capital go to Latinos, and only 0.4% go to Latinas. And Latinas in tech, I don't have that data like deep tech, but I can tell you it's not much.
Uh-huh.
So that's even more daunting. So walking in and being like, hey, look, what I'm putting on the table, look at the data, right? It's good, if not better. And look at the vision, look at the market, look at how efficient we're being with everything that we're building, and having that respect. I think we deserve a lot of respect for going into the room knowing that 0.4% of capital goes to us, and we still show up there with our best face forward and the best attitude, and we keep building. So
Yeah.
all power to all Latinas out there. All power to all founders, because being a founder is not easy. But all powers to all Latina founders out there, because I'm one of them. And
Yeah.
yeah, I know it's not easy to be in the room.
Okay. Tell me more about this tech piece and how Real is being integrated into Suma. I know you have a lot of exciting new developments and projects coming up. You've only had a couple weeks, but it sounds like you're fully in the saddle. Yeah, I'm curious what the Suma Real integration will look like for consumers.
We just released it and it's incredible. So what it looks like historically for Suma, it was very, you know, it's been really creative, culturally driven content and financial education. They took an approach that it was very original, which is okay, let's go community first, right? Let's go full on, build the community, understand the community, and then deliver those products to that community, right? And they have a huge community. They have over a reach of over 5 million people. So when with Real in particular, what we did is that we integrated the savings and the chippings. So what happens is that, let's say that you're saving for a down payment for a car or for books for your next semester in college. And you can set up a super simple saving plan with Suma that's using all the algorithm, the technology that we brought from Real. And you can choose, hey, look, I want to put $5 every day towards the down payment towards the car. We automate all of the savings. As you're saving, we tell you how amazing you are. We keep you updated on how you're achieving your goals. And then you can share it, which is a huge aspect for the Latino community. You can share it with others so that they can chip in. And that's really big. for we already had that at Real, and it's one of the key features that we brought into this partnership. Besides, all the backend technology, I'm oversimplifying all of this, uh, but you can share it with friends or family, and you can be like, "Hey, let's all chip in together for this quinceañera, or let's all chip in together so that we can buy, Daniela the books for college next semester." And that's something that happens in our community already, but we're centralizing it and we're making it very engaging for them with messages and rewards. So I'm very excited about that. And, it just released a couple of weeks back, and I'm incredibly excited to see it live and see that it's so seamlessly got integrated, and how these customers are taking advantage of it.
Yeah, I love the gamification approach and, to your point, the community driven model, because people dread thinking about their finances to begin with. So if there's any way you can find delight, right, and find some sort of engagement, I feel like that's such a win. I'm curious, Daniela, as an immigrant from Venezuela who came, after your childhood, and then now being deeply entrenched working on a business specifically for US Latinos. What is a surprising discovery you found out of the US Latino population, or perhaps a misconception that you feel like people have, because you have such a multifaceted vantage point, having both experiences?
Yeah, so definitely huge misconceptions around, right, Latinos in general. A big percentage of the Latino population now is actually under 30, right? So pretty young, born and raised here. They speak English as their first language. Spanglish is their favorite language,
Hmm.
as it is for me, right? Because you grow up with Spanish at home, then school in English, but they are very immersed, and they concede they are American. They were born and raised here. And from an economic standpoint, I think there is a big misconception on the kind of jobs or that Latino have. As I said, right, like we contributed almost 3 trillion to the American GDP. So huge contributors. We're one of the largest contributors when it comes to technology, when the purchasing power that we have, it's tremendous. So going out there and realizing that people still doesn't see us that way, even when our cohort keeps growing and we keep bringing capital, and we the number of Latinos on colleges keeps increasing, numbers on Latinos in different roles, including tech roles, keep increasing. And so it's fascinating to see how much lack of information is there. And yeah, being that it's the first time that I'm fully immersed in an impact product, that's been something that is shocking, right? It's uh, I don't want to say it's ignorant, but it's truly like people should look around and realize really the power that Latinos bring to the table. And
Yeah.
so that's something that the fact that we have to repeat ourselves, the fact that we have to show that, like, hey, you know, where we consume so much media, yet we have minimal media representation. Like all of the things that we could do if we had, and it's a melting pot. Like depending on where you are in the states, you get diverse Latinos too. There is diversity within the Latino community, right? Like I was in Miami for many years, and that's very heavy South American. That's like Venezuela and Colombia, right? New York, you get more Caribbean. I lived in New York many years, and you get a lot of Dominicans and Puerto Ricans. And then I'm now in LA, and you get a lot of Central America, right? You get um, a lot of Mexicans, Salvadorians. So you get a lot of diversity. There is diversity inside our community too. But what really unites us is that love for like Latinidad that we have inside of us. And so yeah, I'm really excited to be part of a movement where it's propelling change in mindset, not only from a Latino perspective, but from a general market perspective. Because in this role, I'm working a lot with large enterprises uh, to sort of bring them access to the Latino community, but also to educate them on the power that the Latino community has.
as we think about personal finance and the power of personal finance education, I think Suma does really such a good job at marrying the ed tech and fintech pieces right together, where it's not just figuring out what to do with your money, but it's actually let's go a step back, right, and understand why these concepts are important, why saving is important, why credit is important,
Yeah.
just sort of the building blocks. I'm curious in this kind of a turbulent economy that we're dealing with. Um, as there seems to be a lot of uncertainty and fear, what are you hearing from, the Suma customers? What are you hearing from the people that you're trying to target? What would you say are maybe like a top three concerns that you're kind of hearing over and over again?
Look, general understanding of finances is something that we constantly see, right? And now with the economy as it is, I think more and more people, it's just the volume of people, not necessarily the topics, but the volume of people that are looking to educate themselves keeps increasing, which, it's fantastic because I think that the only way that we're going to have social equality is that if we have economic equality. So the more that we can be educated around money, the better. That's number one, right? It's like, teach me basics around money. A lot of people don't know about like a 401k. A lot of people don't know about even like the second piece, it's the savings, right? Because a lot of people don't even know about how to distribute savings, right? What are some products that they can take advantage of? So one, it's general education. Two, it's savings. This community is heavy into understanding savings because we grew up where parents having like envelopes, right? And putting
Right.
them underneath the mattress or hiding them in a purse someplace, right? And it's like, no, take the money out of your house, take
Oh
those
yeah,
tiny
Korean immigrants
envelopes.
are the same. We're not that different.
It's like my grandma used to have so many tiny envelopes. I'll tell you
And then
that.
you're like, how do you keep track? Like, you need an envelope to keep track of where all the envelopes are,
I
of like secret
know,
hieroglyphics.
I know, like because they know exactly how much is in each envelope,
Yep.
okay, and where the envelope is located. It's insane. Like, I'm like, oh my goodness, how do you remember all of this? But teaching them, like, hey, no, actually, right, you can take way more advantage of that money if you actually put it on these type of accounts. So that's number two, and then the third one is around investment. So now that I have basic knowledge and I'm looking where to put my savings, also, can I invest? How can I grow my money? Which I think is a constant, right, across everybody right now, or at least the younger generation. Um, but the tricky thing is that Latinos, in many cases, don't feel like they're being spoken to in a relatable way, or they feel excluded from large financial institutions. So that's why our in culture approach, where it's like we talk about soft and hard credit, showing you a taco, right? Soft taco and a hard taco, and like things that are fun because we want to make the money fun. So those are the top three areas that people are reaching out to us for, which which shows you, right? That Latinos have a lot of similar concerns than general market. We just, we want to understand that in a way that is relatable to us. We know that we have financial power. And so pay attention and really see the value that we have to bring to the table. Nobody wants to walk into a room when they don't feel like they're being considered or being valued. And that has happened to Latinos for generations and generations. So that's what we're here to break. So the stereotypes of what being financially savvy should look like.
Yeah. Daniela, financial inclusion and empowerment seem to be really, I can feel your passion, right? It's palpable. But I'm curious, if you weren't building in fintech, what would you be doing?
Uh, I haven't considered it. I love what I'm doing, honestly, and that to me is the most important. Like, I'm not a thief necessarily because it's fintech. I will tell you that I would focus on a challenge that I'm passionate about, um, because that's what's gonna drive me, right? It happens to be that financial psychology has been big passion of mine for many years since I moved to the state, and I was the first one in my family to move to the States and had no idea about banking structures or credit cards and did some stupid mistakes. Uh, and that's where my fascination began. But that's why I keep at it. But yeah, I'll have to think deep about that one.
Yeah, I'll circle back to you on that one. Well, thank you so much, Daniela Corrente of Suma Wealth. It was honestly such a pleasure to speak with you today, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much, Melody. Really glad to be here. And yeah, anybody, feel free to reach out and check us out.